Chapter 10. Not everyone needs to read. In 1968, we had an epic snowstorm and ice storm. It knocked the power out all across the thumb of Michigan. The poles snapped right off at the base, and they just laid down in the fields. It was quite a sight. Dad was still a fireman, and they all immediately started hauling water to the farm animals. The town seemed small until you had to water all the animals. My friend Cheryl was brought to the house to stay. We had Robert and Karen, Jane and me, and then Cheryl. I asked Mother, where's Cheryl's brothers and why didn't they come to the house with her? Dad had reconfigured our hot water heat so that it would gravity flow up to the bedrooms, so they were moderately warm. We had a fireplace and Mother was cooking in that, and all the neighbors were using our house as a way station. It was fun. Lots of food and drink and laughter and a camaraderie that I loved filled the house. But I kept wondering about Cheryl's little brothers and asked Mother several times, until I could see there would be no answer and I better leave it alone. We were treated as a disaster zone, and Detroit sent up the biggest equipment I had ever seen. They brought in one piece of equipment that would pick up an equipment truck and place it in the field beside the pole. The men would then replace the pole, and then the larger truck would retrieve the repair truck and place it back on the road. This took a fair amount of time, so we were in this crowded and busy house for 5 days or so. I was glad when everyone went home. I loved having my sister-in-law Karen there. She was so classy. She could cut her hair, and that was a treat. I always felt taken care of with her in the home. My sister Marilyn had moved out east with her husband Tom and was busy getting his doctoral degree in genetics while she worked on her undergraduate degree. Jane really wanted to visit them and was begging for a plane ticket. Well, there was no way in bloody hell Dad was going to let her travel alone, so they devised a plan to drive out to New Hampshire and visit over Christmas vacation. Robert and Karen would go, with Robert doing the majority of the driving. Karen was in the living room ironing clothes for the trip. It was getting late in the day and I was watching TV. She told me I should be getting ready to leave. I said, I'm sure I'm not going. She asked what I meant, and I said they never take me on a trip. She looked at me for a moment, and then she would call Mother and check. I was pretty sure Mother had me staying at Elner's for the time, but Karen was having none of it. She called Mother, and after a pretty hushed conversation, she came back and said, yes, I was going. I was flabbergasted. My family never took me anywhere. They owned a place in Florida for many years and visited every year, but I never saw it and actually never knew for certain that they were going or where they were going or what they were going to do. If Mother could get out of taking me to the cottage or cabin, she would leave me and was aggravated when she had to take me. I asked her once, how many children would a woman have on average if there was no birth control? And she said 5. Richard, Robert, Marilyn, Jane, Jennifer. We all laughed, but we knew she would have only had one if she could have controlled it. The trip was fun. I slept through the mountains and was pretty mad at myself. Marilyn and Tom's place was small but homey, and we all squeezed in. They bought live lobsters, and we boiled them till they were red and ate them. It was quite an experience for me. I was so happy Karen made sure I got to go. On the way home, we wanted to go through Boston and see the Old North Church. We could see it from the freeway, but never took the right exit ramp and just kept looping around the city. Robert was so mad he just stayed on the freeway the next time we looped around the city, and we watched Boston recede into the distance. I wondered how many years before I could return and actually see the Old North Church. That spring was wet and nasty, and the fields were muddy as ever. We had a farm lane that went back to the back of the farm near the woods. Now my dad loved to drink and drive. We would go on long Sunday drives, and he would show us how to throw an empty beer can over the car to the right-hand ditch. We hated this and would complain, but he would laugh and say, well, they'll rust away and disappear. Yeah, in about 200 years, Dad. He loved the challenge of getting to the back of the farm on a warm, sunny spring day. Almost every year, we would have to call the local tow truck driver to retrieve the car from the mud. One year, he got so stuck the tow truck needed a tow truck. He loved this. He would take a new Pontiac and drive the shit out of it. Well, that spring, he had not gotten into his annex yet when the phone rang and it was Rick's towing. Rick says, Bob, I got time today. You stuck yet? He told a really funny story about his youth and getting a Model T stuck in the mud. They had it so buried that it had created a suction under the car. Dad and his friends decided to tie one end of the car to the truck and the other end of the car to a tree. They figured they could tighten the ropes enough to break the suction. Well, they did. They tugged and pulled, and in an instant the car turned upside down. Now it was stuck on its top. I don't know what they did after that, as Dad was always laughing too hard for me to catch the end of the story. He had quite a life, and I loved his stories. When he got to the age of drawing Social Security, he didn't have a birth certificate to prove his age. So he had to take a government form around to the older men and women in town and have them verify they remember him being born in 1907. He was 61 when he was doing that, and the people he sought had to have been older than 21 when he was born. So he was looking for people older than 84. Well, he'd laugh. They don't remember a damn thing. He could tell them anything and they signed. So he added a year to his age. When he was young, he had changed his report card late one night. He climbed in the office window at school and happily saw that the records were in pencils. So he took a pencil and added a half a year of government. And what do you know? He was ready for graduation. I think that was 1918 or 1919. He always said he graduated from high school, but I think he was done in 8th grade. I think he did everything he could to keep that a secret. He went off to Detroit, and there he got a job removing liquor from the undercarriages of cars, placing the liquor into the trunk and then charging people for some repair. He said the best year was 1919. Now, whether he changed his year of birth from 7 to 6 would still make him only 12 or 13 when he went off to Detroit. We don't have a graduation certificate for him, but he was in the 12th grade graduation picture. Of course, that would have been easy to do. Just slip into line and no one would have said a word. With his antics, he retired 1 year early, and Mother continued working. He told me once that his father did not appreciate schooling and said to him, "Not everybody needs to read in Tuscola County. 1 or 2 are enough," he declared. "It doesn't have to be you." Dad had wanted to grow up to be a doctor, but you can see the cards were stacked against him. He asked for $90 for tuition, and the answer was no. That would have been a lot of money at the time, and I'm sure my family lived mainly off the land and used very little paper money per se. It was long about 68, Dad bought a turquoise Ford El Camino. It was a stick on the column, and I could drive and shift with the best of them at age 11. One day, the state police showed up and caught Dad particularly drunk. They asked him to step out of the house. They wanted to know if he owned a turquoise El Camino, and Dad said yes. Well, they knew that Dad did not have a clue where the old car was, so they started in on him. "Can you show us the car?" Dad said, "Yes. It's right here behind these bushes." He stumbles across the yard, showing them the backside of a wall of lilacs. Well, it was not there. "Oh, it's over here behind these bushes." "No." He stumbled across another yard and another wall of bushes and said, "It's here," before he actually looked. Finally, they told him it was 5 miles out of town, out of gas, and in a cornfield. The kids had hot-wired the car with the keys in the ignition, never checked the gas, and only made it 5 miles. We laughed so hard and didn't press charges, but did make fun of them for not checking the gas or the ignition for the key. Dad had a favorite fishing pole he lost in the farm pond. It could have been the one I dropped into White Creek. He ordered a huge magnet from Scientific America so he could fish the pole out. No Amazon Prime then. Weeks passed. Then the magnet was on back order. A month or 2 passed. Dad was getting mad. Finally, the magnet arrived, and he took the El Camino to the pond, got out, walked to the exact spot he had marked, and threw the magnet into the water. Would you believe Dad threw that puppy in but forgot to tie a string onto it? Now he needed another magnet to retrieve the first magnet so he could retrieve his pole. When he finally got the second magnet, he drove back to the pond, but this time he forgot to put the car in gear. As he was examining the situation, he heard a sort of rumbling and turned around just in time to jump out of the way of the El Camino, which was headed straight down the embankment towards him. Then he needed a tow truck, which he had to walk back up to the house to call. While they fished his car out, he fished his pole out. Dad had stocked the pond with trout. Every night we would go back and feed the fish with a fish pellet he had bought at the elevator. He would stand at one end, and Jane and I would get into the pond right below him. He would toss the pellets into the pond around us. Then the fish would start to eat, and it was like being in a roiling pot with all the action. They would try not to hit you, but they did, flipping and hitting and jumping right beside you, swimming with the fishes. If only I'd had a bite. The summer stretched out before us, and one job that needed constant attention was the lawn. We had the largest lawn ever. We mowed the backyard, the backyard, the front yard, the side yard with the clothesline, the circle in the driveway, the farm lane to the garden, and the side yard to Kaminsky's, which was almost an acre by itself. Luckily, we had a Cub Cadet lawn tractor. Dad taught me to drive at age 8. It was the only time Mother fussed about me using equipment too big for my age. I liked that she was concerned, but way more excited to get my hands on the tractor. For me, it was the perfect size big piece of equipment. I could take it back to the pond, through the woods, and mow. Dad could be so picky about the lawn, and I did get sick of mowing. One day, the main belt on the mower broke, the one that actually drives the blades on top of the mower bed itself. This belt I had watched Dad change before, but I'd never done it alone. And that day, that was what he was demanding of me on the phone. I argued with him, but he would hear none of it. I was to put blocks next to the cement patio and drive the mower up, so the front wheels were on the cement and the back wheels would stay on the lawn. Simple enough, it seems. The trouble was, if you used too much gas, you would lunge totally onto the porch, and then you had to drop the back wheel off the cement, which is what I found scary. I begged Dad not to make me do it. I remember saying to him, "But Dad, I'm only 11. "Don't care," he said. "Get the lawn mowed." I did get the belt onto his liking. He inspected it later, and I did get the lawn mowed. But come on, Dad. Really? With Dad, it was always trial by fire. Learn it now or figure it out, but get her done. Mostly he would get himself into an awkward situation and then start yelling for some specific tool like, "Get me a 3/4-inch socket wrench with extension." I was pretty good at this game. I knew what socket meant, so I'd start there and usually could guess. Lock wrench? Oh, that would be a wrench with locks. Adjustable and regular wrenches all made sense. For pinching devices, I would just grab 2 or 3 to cover all the bases. Now, screwdrivers were a different matter. He was so picky about it fitting just so into the screw so you didn't strip the screw, and would really be mad about the wrong type, flat or Phillips, or the size and length. Grabbing a driver too long for a job was just as bad as too wide to fit the screw or too small and sloppy. Again, I would just grab several and hope for the best. Dad had installed our hydronic water system and trained us all to listen to it and hear for problems. We could identify pumps needing oil and lines needed bleeding. It was the heartbeat of the house, always alive with creaks and groans, but functioning right along Dad's constant care. He used it often, as an excuse, to check out the basement and have a little nip. One thing my dad relied on was a little money from the government each year for leaving 5 acres fallow. This is a good attempt to keep fields from being overused. Each year he got about $125 just before deer hunting season. Well, I loved the old lawnmower tractor and decided to mow the path down to the pond. The government decided we were baling the hay, so they cut him off that year. He never said a word, but Mother made sure I knew. Dang, and I just wanted a clean path. Just before Dad left for hunting camp one year, he fell on the icy sidewalk with a keg of beer in his hands. He smashed his thumb and first 2 fingers pretty good. The tip of all of them had to be amputated. He told everyone that Uncle Albert shut his hand in the car trunk. This was a crafty dodging of workman's comp, which he applied for and got. Then he was caught signing insurance policies and cut off. The adjuster told him the signing was working, and thus he was working and did not need workman's comp. At least that one wasn't my fault. The doctor told him he couldn't drink at camp that year, and Dad begged him for just 1 bottle. He swore he would only get 1 bottle of whiskey. The doctor agreed, and Dad went off and bought a half-gallon bottle. That doctor used to make Dad's appointments at 4:30 so they could smoke and drink after the exam. When Dad died, the doctor died a few days later. That fall was a beautiful fall, and the leaves on the fence line were glistening and shimmering in the wind. Dad started telling me a story about the fence line. At first it was an interesting enough story, but my dense skull started nudging me to remember. He was pointing out that some of the trees grew straight and tall even though a barbed wire had been nailed to them years before. These trees would absorb the wire and continue to grow straight and true. Other trees would bend and swoop, trying to get away from the barbed wire. He told me that people are the same. We can take a bad situation and absorb it, or fight it, but either way we would have to carry it. Fight or flight, but scarred just the same. I knew there was a hidden message there. Mother had been telling me that I was just going to have to understand. Understand what? I would ask and then over time stop asking. I knew what she meant. There was no more answer to give. I would just have to understand. Or if it were in Dad's story, you have to realize the burden is yours to carry, like it or not. This is not the worst lesson in the world to learn. Could the delivery have been nicer? Well, hell yes. But being able to pick up and carry a burden like buying a house or a job or children and quietly placing it under your arm and being able to continue your life is a gift in many ways. We all thrash about complaining about our lives, but some are more bent than others. Well, that wasn't very funny. Let's talk about Robert. He was always doing something interesting. He had spent the winter in the basement making a balsa wood plane. This was quite elaborate. He built a frame, added guy wires for hand controls, and stretched over a polymer film, his was orange, and then added a nice little engine which he fussed about over quite a bit. When it was fired up, it stank to high heavens and would quickly fill the area with smoke, and the noise was deafening. Robert took the plane out into the middle of the field where eventually Jane and I built the horse pasture. He found a nice middle ground, stretched the wires out straight, and got a friend to hold the plane for takeoff. This could be tricky, but they were successful getting the plane flying. Round and round he flew the plane, up a little, down a little, slow and steady. As Robert went round and round, he also stepped to the right each time. It was a big field, so no problem yet. But he continued until we could all see he was going to fly that plane right into the last fire hydrant in the line. It was standing in the weeds, peeking out just a little. We started to scream and wave our arms, but Robert couldn't hear us with all the motor noise being so loud and all. We moved around, waved some more, screamed, nothing. So we screamed and flapped our arms around some more. It was a panic situation for sure. We all knew how mad he would be if anything happened to his plane. But you guessed it, he flew that puppy right into the hydrant and it totally exploded. Not a piece was left over a few inches in size. And man, was he mad. I don't remember much after that, which means I probably ran upstairs to hide. Oh well. Red Smith had pulled into the driveway. He sold vegetables. I grabbed a small piece of paper and a pencil and settled into a chair at the kitchen table. He came in the back door and spoke to Mother. Reva, he says, I got the best goddamn tomato in the trunk you ever saw in your whole goddamn life. I marked 2 slashes on the paper with a pencil. He continued talking and I continued marking the paper. When he left, Dad said, well? I said 32. You see, Red Smith could swear like a trooper and a seaman at the same time. He begged Mother to come out to the van and see. He took her out to his early version of a Econoline van. It had the bubbleless fenders and a back-slit vertical door and was painted a dull gray. Mother went out to the van and purchased a very good-looking tomato, maybe even the best goddamn tomato I ever saw. What a trip. That man could sell anything.